So in our ongoing discussion about the Second Battle of Geonosis, I figured it was time to focus on the Separatist superweapon that was deployed during the engagement, a squadron of supertanks, an experimental type of Separatist heavy armor. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So many of us are at least somewhat familiar with the supertank. It was an experimental prototype for a new form of heavy armor that was deployed only during the Battle of Geonosis, the Second Battle of Geonosis. But I figured today we'd take a closer look at the technical specifications of the vehicle and how exactly it was deployed and why we didn't see it anywhere else. So let's just start with what exactly is the supertank. Well, like the name suggests, it's heavy armor. It's a tank designed to engage other vehicles and infantry. It, however, had some very unique features, most notably its incredibly thick armor and very capable ray shield system. This kept the tank virtually indestructible on the battlefield, meaning it was very, very well protected. This alone made it a very formidable foe for any Republic force, having to dispatch the nearly indestructible Separatist heavy armor. But there were other aspects that played in its favor as well, like its substantial armament. The supertank's primary armament was a pair of twin laser cannons mounted on either side of the vehicle for engaging light infantry that got close to it. Similarly, there was another pair of twin laser turrets, which could fill a similar role but had a wider range of fire. And lastly, there was a single concealed twin concussion warhead launcher. This allowed the heavy tank to engage vehicles at range. We see this used like a mortar system during the Second Battle of Geonosis. And these weapons were sort of like the weak spot of the tank, because the tank had what was essentially plate armor scattered around it. It would have to peel back this armor to use this mortar concussion launcher. As a result, the act of using the most devastating weapon on the tank made the tank vulnerable for brief periods of time, especially if the ray shields had been worked to their exhaustion point. This whole armament of weaponry on this rather large ground vehicle would be managed by only two droids, a pilot and a gunner. The pilot would drive the vehicle and the gunner would control the targeting systems, mostly for the concussion warhead launcher, but also for the turrets. So now that we know what the supertank is, let's talk a little bit about its history. It was designed and developed by Bactoid Armor Workshop, which made a lot of the other Separatist vehicles, things like the AAT. You can see clear lineage there. It looks similar to a combination of an AAT and an MTT. The vehicle was designed and manufactured in only one place, the reconstructed droid foundries on Geonosis. This is where the vehicle's main production facility was, and there are some assumptions that I'll get to later about why that was the case. But this is where the only batch of these vehicles ever to be produced were made, and this is where they were destroyed. By the time of the Second Battle of Geonosis, about 20 had been produced, and during the battle, about 20 were used on the bridge, with an extra one being used to attempt to neutralize the two Jedi infiltrators that had penetrated into the factory. Ultimately, in the engagement, all of them were destroyed, with most of them being cast into the chasm outside of the factory, and the last one being destroyed in the factory's collapse. While these weapons did prove remarkably effective at engaging Republic forces during the battle, they were never seen again. After all, the only reason that Republic forces were able to defeat them was circumstantial environmental tricks, blowing out a bridge that they were on. Otherwise, these would have blown right through Republic lines. It seems like they're an amazing tool of war. So why exactly didn't the Separatists build these somewhere else? Well, I have a few theories on that. First off, it seems like the design and production process for these vehicles was massive. It seems like it took the entire year or so prior to the Second Battle of Geonosis to actually get a production line up and running for these tanks. So it can be assumed that they're relatively complex and probably pretty expensive to manufacture, only being able to be made in small batches over very long periods of time. It was also likely that the specific design of this foundry built on Geonosis was built around the idea of building this super tank. So to facilitate production somewhere else, they'd have to build a whole new factory and dedicate a vast amount of resources to the production of these vehicles. Now, it's entirely likely that someone in Separatist leadership made the decision, that the Empire probably should have made about the Death Star, that investing all of those resources into the production of a single type of vehicle was probably not a great investment, and would leave Separatist forces vulnerable to very specific kinds of attacks. Attacks that could be devised to, say, get within the ray shields of the supertank and under the repulsor lifts, which could theoretically destroy it. So maybe it was decided that these were just too expensive to produce en masse, and the only ones that ever saw combat were during the Second Battle of Geonosis, where they were rolling out of the factory that was building them. All in all, the SuperTank did still pose a very major threat to Republic forces. Its concussion warhead launchers did vast amounts of damage, were able to easily dispatch of some heavy Republic anti-vehicle artillery, and send Republic infantry and even heavy armor like the ATTE scattering for cover. Still, while the SuperTanks were only deployed in one battle throughout the Clone Wars, they played a major role in that engagement, which was the Second Battle of Geonosis, and specifically the Republic assault on the droid factory itself. And if you'd like to learn about that assault, I'll leave a link up here to my battle analysis on that engagement. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments why you think the Separatists didn't build more SuperTanks. Do you think I'm right about the sort of cost-to-value ratio being off? Or do you think there's another reason why the Separatists didn't start turning out these miraculous heavy tanks? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.